Hey everyone, what's going on? Yesterday in the mainstream media in regards to sports, the major story was that Anthony Davis is going to be traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. And if you're new to the channel, check out some links in the description and you'll easily learn to apply what I'm going to show in this video. But all of these mainstream media stories and our sports leagues, everything that is done, it is all by this perfect script. It is all done by this mathematical code that if you understand ancient knowledge practices, you can understand why these things happen on the days that they do. And we get this big story about Anthony Davis being traded to the Lakers, the former Pelican. If you go from his birthday, which is March 11th, to the day that this trade is announced, it's 96 days, also 3 months and 4 days. And in this practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, if you write out Pelicans, Pelicans equals 34, like 3 months and 4 days, and Lakers equals 96, like 96 days. And what else is really interesting is that if you've been following what I've been talking about for a number of years, the number 34 has been really important to a Kobe Bryant narrative, and it was super important to when he tore his Achilles at the age of 34, and he did it against the Warriors, and he scored 43 points, the reflection of 34, and he got the Lakers their 34th win of the season, and 34 weeks later, he came back in the 34th week later, and they played the Toronto Raptors, who was also the team that he scored his 81 points against, right? And look at Kobe's name, Kobe Bean Bryant, guy known for scoring 81 points in the game. His name equals 81. I talked about when DeMarcus Cousins tore his Achilles when he was a Pelican. DeMarcus Cousins, he did it with 8.1 seconds left in the game. And DeMarcus Amir Cousins, oh, his name just so happens to equal 81 as well. And he did it against can't remember. He did it against the Rockets, but he made his comeback this year on January 18th against the Los Angeles Clippers. And if you write out Los Angeles Clippers, that just so happens to equal 81 in Gematria. The reason this is so important, though, is because LeBron James, if you recall, LeBron James also, he got injured this year, which I had talked about on my blog back on November 20th. I made this blog post and I talked about all of this stuff with the number 34 and Kobe Bryant, you know. He couldn't play with Shaq, who wore number 34, and he announced his retirement 34 days after the anniversary of Philadelphia being founded. That's where he's from. He's a native of Philadelphia. Just before he announced his retirement, the Lakers lost by 34 points to the Golden State Warriors, and that was the team that Kobe tore his Achilles against, right? And there was just all of these 34s that were seemingly bad, and I knew LeBron James was going to be turning 34 this year, so I thought possibly LeBron James might get injured. And then LeBron James goes on to get injured on Christmas Day, which just so happened to be the Lakers' 34th game of the season. And LeBron James makes his comeback against the Clippers on January 31st. And think about DeMarcus Cousins making his comeback against the Clippers. But he makes this comeback, and then he doesn't play against the Warriors 34 days after his birthday. So he comes back, then he sits out 34 days after his birthday when they play the Warriors. And then they didn't play the Clippers again until the date of 3-4. And on that day, the Lakers just so happened to get their 34th loss of the season on 3-4 to the Clippers, who LeBron James made his comeback against, after getting injured on the Lakers' 34th game of the season, just before turning 34 years old. So now the Lakers, we'll just pull it up here really quick. The Lakers are getting Anthony Davis 3 months and 4 days. They announced this 3 months and 4 days after Anthony Davis's birthday, a 34. And the reason this is so significant is if you go from the day that LeBron James got injured on Christmas Day on the Lakers' 34th game to the day we get this Anthony Davis stuff, it's 172 days. And Would you believe that Anthony Davis and Gematria just so happens to equal 172? So they're getting him 172 days after LeBron's injury, all connected to the 34. And then Anthony Davis, it comes 3 months and 4 days after his birthday. And remember, DeMarcus Cousins was also a Pelican when he tore his Achilles. And what's interesting about that, then, we get the story of Kevin Durant tearing his Achilles. And I always document how I get these weird comments and whatnot, and they're always on like these really old videos, and it doesn't make that much sense. But I got this weird comment, or just a trolled comment, on a video from 2015 about Kobe Bryant's 81-point game. And this was on May 7th, I believe, when the Raptors and the 76ers were still playing each other, right? And what I pointed out was there's this big narrative that I have been following for a long time with Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, and how it syncs up to Philadelphia. Kobe Bryant's a Philadelphia native. Michael Jordan once finished his career while playing the Philadelphia 76ers, and the original capital of the country, Jordan, was called Philadelphia, and then it was later destroyed by earthquakes and whatnot. And the Raptors are important to this because there's this big narrative with Hulk Hogan that has been going on for a number of years, and Hulk Hogan's birthday just so happens to be August 11th, and this year, SummerSlam in wrestling just so happens to be in Toronto on Hulk Hogan's birthday. And Hulk Hogan, at one point in time, when he got his ribs broke by the guy named Earthquake, that happened on the Brother Love show, and Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. And when Hulk Hogan got his revenge, he got his revenge at SummerSlam that was held in Philadelphia at the Spectrum. And that's important because Michael Jordan owns the Charlotte Hornets, who play in the Spectrum Center, and so on. There's this big narrative that is going along connected to Philadelphia. It's why the Toronto Raptors won the NBA Finals, I'm absolutely positive, because it's connected to the same narrative I've been talking about with August 11th. And anyway, the whole point is, and think about Kobe too. Kobe scores his 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. He also makes his comeback in the 34th week after tearing his Achilles. First game he played was against the Raptors. But I got this comment on May 7th, which just so happens to be 34 days before Kevin Durant tore his Achilles. And it also just so happens to be 3 months and 4 days before August 11th. Just point this out really quick. 3 months and 4 days, also 96 days before August 11th. This also just so happens to be the 223rd day of the year. And notice if you write out Philadelphia, if I spell it right, Philadelphia equals 223. And recently, if you've been following my videos, YouTube restricted one of my videos that I put out on the 65th day of the year. Or they restricted an old video about Allen Iverson, the guy who was known for playing for Philadelphia, but they restricted it on the 65th day of the year. And on that same day, the Philadelphia 76ers were playing their 65th game of the season. Notice Philadelphia equals 65. It was their 65th game of the season. They lost. And Zach LaVine, whose name equals 65, he won the game by a buzzer beater. And so there's all this 65 stuff. And then YouTube completely took that video down on the date of June 5th, 6-5. And I'm just bringing all this up because all of it is just somehow connected to Philadelphia, right? And what's so interesting about this even more is if you look up Lonzo Ball, who's part of this trade, Lonzo Ball, his birthday just so happens to be October 27th, which is the anniversary of Philadelphia being founded. And another guy in that trade was Josh Hart. Josh Hart, his birthday just so happens to be March 6th, which is the 65th day of the year. And even more interesting is this story comes 101 days after his birthday. And remember, Philadelphia also equals 101. Josh Hart's birthday, the 65th day of the year. 101 days after his birthday, he gets traded to the Pelicans in this trade. And he also played college for Villanova. And he was on the Villanova team that that beat Michael Jordan's North Carolina team in 2016. Remember, it was a Michael Jordan versus Kobe Bryant thing because Villanova's from the Philadelphia area, North Carolina, connected to Michael Jordan. You know. So let's look at the third guy in this trade here. It's Brandon Ingram. And when you go to Brandon Ingram, you don't notice any direct ties really to Philadelphia but look at his name in Gematria. Brandon Xavier Ingram. Brandon Xavier Ingram. Just so happens to equal 101, just like Philadelphia. Also, what's interesting is if you write out New Orleans Pelicans, it also equals 101 in Gematria. And this is something I've been documenting about for a while as well, even with the Zion Williamson. They're going to get the first pick in the draft and so on. The New Orleans Pelicans are connected to Philadelphia. They also equal 205, and in Jewish gematria, Philadelphia equals 205. And it's important to August 10th and August 11th of this year because that is when the Jewish Remembrance Day of the destruction of the two temples called Tisha B'Av begins. And there's a number of things that are interesting in regards to this, but Tisha B'Av just so happens to equal, well, I spelled it wrong there, but it's just Tisha B'Av. There we go. 134 in Gematria. And Lonzo Ball just so happens to also equal 134. And the reason this is interesting is because if you go from this date to the anniversary of Philadelphia and also to Lonzo Ball's birthday, it just so happens to be 134 days. I'll explain a little bit more about this number here in a little bit, but just know that it is important because there is also this narrative that is really synced up to the royal family and something I've been talking about since last year and the importance to the date of August 10th with Prince Charles possibly becoming King Charles III and so on. But Luke Walton also equals 134, the Lakers coach who just resigned. And now he's the coach of the Sacramento Kings. And there's just a humongous narrative to the king symbolism. Think about LeBron James, who was king. He is King James, and he played for the Cavaliers, who in history are followers of King Charles during the English Civil War. That is the reason why DeMarcus Cousins is in this riddle as well, because he was known for being the Sacramento King before he went on to the Pelicans and tore his Achilles and now plays for the Golden State Warriors. And keep in mind that I talked about all of this clear back in November, and then, Luke Walton goes on to be the Sacramento Kings coach and so on, because it's an absolute narrative that has been going on with LeBron King James since he's been in the league. And back to the 101 stuff. So Brandon Ingram equals Xavier Ingram equals 101 in Gematria, like Philadelphia, like New Orleans Pelicans, like how Josh Hart got traded 101 days after his birthday. And if you read out LeBron's full name, LeBron Raymond James, his name just so happens to equal 101 as well. Also 79, just like Pelicans, just like New Orleans Pelicans. And this is even more interesting because Brandon Ingram got traded 79 days before his birthday, to the Pelicans of all teams, right? And did you notice LeBron also equaled 205, just like New Orleans Pelicans, just like Philadelphia. This year, on September 14th, it will be the 205th anniversary of Francis Scott Key writing the national anthem, which is important to all that flag symbolism that they were using. And that's why the Eagles had went on to win Super Bowl 52, because the flag was sewn at 239 Arch Street in Philadelphia. 239 is the 52nd prime number. That's why Donald Trump called out the NFL for kneeling on the date of 23/9. The 52nd prime is 239. They won Super Bowl 52, right? Of course, on that same day that Trump called out the NFL for kneeling, LeBron James called Donald Trump "you bum," and "you bum" in Gematria equals 51. And this was just after the Cavaliers had won the NBA Finals and they've won a sports championship for Cleveland for the first time in 51 years. And LeBron James also, with the S exception, equals 51. So does Cleveland, and they won for the first time in 51 years. He wore all the WWE stuff, right? WWE equals 51. Oh, their slogan was, what was it? Believe or something? Can't remember what their slogan was. But whatever their slogan was, it was 51. And they even went to the White House the same day Donald Trump first visited the White House on November 10th, the day leaving 51 days in the year. Also, Quicken Loans, right, where they play, Quicken Loans, that equals 51. And just after the Cavaliers won the NBA Finals on the real King James's birthday, Donald Trump had his national convention in Cleveland at the Quicken Loans, right? And it was all synced up to Queen Elizabeth and so on. He even came out listening to the song "We Are the Champions" by the band Queen. That 101 number is also important to the Queen because the 26th prime number is 101, and the word Queen just so happens to equal 26. Also, its reflection, 62. Queen Elizabeth became the Queen on the date of 2/6, February 6th, and she got coronated on the date of 6/2. She was born in the year 26. She became the Queen in 1952, and later that year she even turned 26 years old. You know, what are the odds that Queen equals 26? All of them syncs up to Queen Elizabeth. Her mother died just after 9/11 at the age of 101. Her sister died right around that same time. It was synced up by the numbers. Can't remember how it all synced up, but her sister died like 49 days before her mom, and then they both got buried on 4/9 or something like that. So what I was talking about way back when with the royal symbolism was that LeBron is King James, and King James was the father of Prince Charles, or who later became King Charles the First, and then we had King Charles the Second. That was all during the English Civil War. So in order for King Prince Charles right now to become King Charles the Third, it would seem fitting if LeBron James would get injured and we would have, sort of like symbolic of King James dying, and then we would get the rise of the new king or whatever, right? King Charles. So LeBron ended up getting injured, and there was all of this narrative to the Kings, and Luke Walton leaves, and now he's the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. And the same year that Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles tendon, Luke Walton was a Laker for all these years, and then in the 2012-2013 season, Luke Walton became a Cleveland Cavalier, and then that was the same season that Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles tendon. So, it's definitely synced up to what I've been talking about. And what's interesting is that if you go from Prince Charles's birthday to this day that Anthony Davis is getting traded, or they announced this trade, it's 213 days. And that sticks out because I've been talking a lot about this Francis Bacon cipher. Francis Bacon is the guy who supposedly wrote the King James Bible that came out in the year 1611. And let's look at why this is interesting. The year 1611, in this Jewish Gematria cipher, I said Philadelphia equals 205. Philadelphia equals 205. But if you read it all out, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, it equals 1611. This number that's important to the King James Bible. Francis Bacon, the guy who supposedly wrote the majority of the King James Bible and whatnot. So I'm talking about these Francis Bacon ciphers lately. And it's also a pig year, Chinese pig year. Think about bacon and pigs. And France has been really, really important to how it all syncs up as well. This year, August 10th, is really important to the fall of the French monarchy in France and so on. And anyway, in this cipher, Kobe Bean Bryant equals 213. And this comes 213 days after King Prince Charles's birthday. The NBA Finals equal 213. Los Angeles is in the 213 area code. Los Angeles in these Francis Bacon ciphers equals 213. Also interesting that Anthony Davis equals the same as Kobe Bryant in these ciphers. Look at Kobe Bryant equals 224, and Frank Baconis and Anthony Davis equals 224 in reverse Francis Bacon. And this is interesting because Toronto Raptors equal 224, and when they won the NBA Finals, what was it, 114 to 110, a total score of 224 points. And it's absolutely, why would they fouled at the very end of that game, and Kawhi had to go in and make 2 more free throws to make the score 114, which is also interesting in regards to LeBron James, who equals 114, but just pointing out that these ciphers are actually super important to what's going on. Also, if you notice, if you go from the day of this trade to Prince Charles's next birthday, it's 152 days, and Anthony Davis just so happens to equal 152. So I know that it is absolutely synced up. If you write out King Charles, it equals 64, just like Anthony Davis and one of the other ciphers. Let's just go back to the regular one here. We'll write out Anthony Davis again. Equals 64. He's born on 311, which 311 is the 64th prime number. King Charles equals 64. A bunch to do with that Zion Williamson trade, and Anthony Davis was all about the number 64 and whatnot. Or Zion Williamson going to be going to the Pelicans because, they got the number 1 pick is what I mean. But a bunch of that was synced up to the number 64. Zion equals 64. And it was 64 days after Anthony Davis's birthday on 311, the 64th prime number, and his name equals 64. It's also the anniversary of Israel declaring its independence that day. Israel equals 64. Israel also equals 205 in Jewish Gematria, right? So hopefully I'm not losing you here, but these other ciphers are definitely important. And if you understand the significance, Israel 205, but just like Philadelphia equals 205. Just like LeBron Ramon James equals 205. Just like New Orleans Pelicans equals 205. I just keep bringing this up because it's important to why the Jewish Gematria is important. Think about Zion and Israel and Jewish Gematria and so on, and how it all, is intertwined with what is going on. LeBron James even, remember he got some flack for tweeting the lyrics to the song ASMR that talked about your Jewish money. And notice LeBron James in Jewish Gematria equals 923. This is that date that, he called Donald Trump a bum. It's the day that Donald Trump called out the NFL for kneeling. That was all synced up to Philadelphia. In 2015, there was a Philadelphia train wreck that happened. Supposedly happened at 9:23 p.m. Later that year, LeBron James was in the movie Trainwreck with Amy Schumer. And that movie just so happened to take place. It opens up with Amy Schumer's character is 9 years old, and then the rest of the movie takes place 23 years later. And we also had Pope Francis visit the United States later that year, and he came to the United States on his 923rd day as Pope, and then he went to the White House on 9/23, and CNN even showed us that he arrived at the White House at 9:23 in the morning. It's the big important thing. And when he left the United States, he left from Philadelphia, and later that night we got the 4th blood moon of the tetrad. So it's absolutely significant. Also, if you go from Kobe Bryant's last birthday to this trade, Kobe Bryant's birthday, it just so happens to be 9 months and 23 days, right? Syncing up to LeBron James, syncing up to all the stuff in regards to the flag in Philadelphia, Pope Francis, a lot of interrelated events going on. All of this stuff, too, was synced up to the King James Bible, right? Pope Francis in Jewish Gematria equals 404. And when he arrived in the United States, it was in the 404th year of the King James Bible that supposedly came out in 1611. 404 years later, Pope Francis arrived in the United States at 4:04 p.m. Right? What are the odds? 4:04. In Satanic Gematria, King James equals 404. Prince Charles also equals 404. If I could type it out here. Prince Charles, 404. Revelation also has 404 verses, and so on. Absolutely important to the narrative. So, I'm going to end the video really soon, but hopefully you get the gist of what I am saying. I started the video off talking about the really super importance of the number 34, and it really is truly synced up to a lot of this royal symbolism. And if you go from August 10th to Prince Charles's birthday, just want to point out that it is also 3 months and 4 days. This is when Tisha B'Av begins, and the reason it's important, Tisha B'Av equals 134. Also, Prince Charles the Third. Oh, not Prince, King Charles. Sorry, King Charles the Third equals 134. Just like Tisha B'Av, that's why Luke Walton is important to the King symbolism, 134. That's why Lonzo Ball got traded 134 days before his birthday, and his name equals 134. That's why SummerSlam equals 134, and that's why Toronto is important to what I'm talking about, and so on. There's something really synced up to earthquakes, Philadelphia. Think about how Philadelphia comes from the book of Revelation, and in the book of Revelation, in Revelation 6:12, it mentions the great earthquake, and then the moon turned blood red, right? And just thinking about Pope Francis's visit, the last blood moon of the Tetrad in 2015, all of these things that I've been talking about with Philadelphia have been really important since 2015. Remember, in 2015, after the Warriors beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals, later that year we had the Kansas City Royals beat the New York Mets in the World Series, and that was all synced up to Pope Francis and Queen Elizabeth as well. And the power even went out and came back on at 9:23 p.m. And earlier in the year, there was a guy dressed up like Pope Francis who caught a home run ball of Salvador Perez. And, Salvador Perez later on went on to be the MVP of the World Series. But I wanted to point out that World Series began on October 27th, 10/27, which the last time that the Royals had won a World Series was on 10/27 in the year 1985, which was also the day that Marty McFly returns home from in Back to the Future, and he has the KC daylighters on his truck. And I bring that up because the Chicago Cubs were supposed to win that year, if you remember, but they didn't win the World Series, but they should have won because of Back to the Future, right? But the team who did win was synced up to Back to the Future regardless, Kansas City, that's what it is, Kansas City equals 122. Golden State equaled 122. Pope Francis 122. Now I've talked about this repetitively, but 122. Gold State located on the 122nd meridian, and so on. Pope Francis named after Saint Francis of Assisi, just like the San Francisco was named after Saint Francis of Assisi, the guy who received the first stigmata, and so on. Just Francis equals 34 as well. The word France equals 34. Does the word flag equal 34? The word flag equals 34. So, super important to this, I don't know, interrelated narrative. And all of this stuff, it makes me think that we're going to get the Lakers and the 76ers in the NBA Finals next year. Just because of all the stuff that I was getting shown with my Allen Iverson video. And remember the Lakers, or the Cleveland Cavaliers also had Tyronn Lue, who was their basketball coach when they won the NBA Finals on the real King James's birthday and so on. And Tyronn Lue is the guy who got stepped over by Allen Iverson. Also, Tyronn Lue played with Michael Jordan for the Washington Wizards. I believe he was even on the team when Michael Jordan uh, finally retired and whatnot. So against Philadelphia, that was all synced up. I can't even remember it all, but I'd have to go back and look at some of my old stuff. But it was absolutely in connection, all by the numbers. You know, they brought a certain guy out of the game on purpose, and so on, and it was all exactly by this code. So we'll see what happens. Waiting for this date of August 10th to show up. June 24th will be an interesting day as well, just because King Charles III and Satanic Gematria equals 624. A big piece of what I was originally talking about with August 10th was all about the Cleveland Indians and Rocky Colavito, and that was all about the number 624. It's the day modern Freemasonry was founded. The word Jesuit equals 624. So, and I was talking about it big time last year, so we'll see if anything comes of 624 this year. I'm trying to think if I see if I forgot anything here. Hmm. You know, with Toronto winning the NBA Finals too, it reminds us of the War of 1812 and the flag symbolism because, Canada was the country who burnt down the original White House and so on. So, the War of 1812 where Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. So there's definitely something important to that. LeBron was even injured on Justin Trudeau's birthday this year because his birthday's on Christmas Day, right? So LeBron got injured on that day. Oh, we'll leave the video there. Hopefully, you get the gist of it. There's definitely something important to Philadelphia and this big narrative that I've been talking about, and so on. So, check out some links in the description. I've talked about this stuff repetitively for a long time now. I don't want to just keep, you know, telling you the same story over and over. So, have a good one. Peace.